Chapter 8:10. Gu Mengmeng looked up, her eyes filled with anticipation. Elvis could not do anything to her. He scratched her little nose and said, "You can listen to the story, but you can't be upset. All that pain accumulated to meet you. If you pity me, I will become very pitiful." Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and nodded. Elvis then continued, "When there was only one wolf left in each of the 3 pits, someone finally approached this pit again. Unfortunately, they were not here to feed us, but to fill the pit. Rocks were continuously thrown down from the top of the pit, smashing onto us, but we could not resist. The space we could move around was compressed by the rocks, while the pit entrance was piled higher and higher by the rocks. The narrow and cramped space made us more and more irritable and uneasy. Our claws dug out deep grooves on the stone walls of the pit, until one day, the huge rocks piled up at the pit entrance suddenly collapsed. We had to avoid the huge rocks in the cramped space, and quickly make judgments, before jumping out of the pit by stepping on rocks one after another. Out of the 3 pits, only 2 wolves came out alive. The other one was buried under a huge rock at the bottom of the pit, smashed into meat paste. And all of this was not the end, but the beginning. Elvis's gaze wandered around and he pointed at an empty space outside the 3 pits, saying, "The other wolf that escaped from the pit and I look at each other with hatred. In each other's eyes, we are just food." Brotherly kinship and whatnot, at that time, had long disappeared. His injuries from the rocks were more serious than mine, so I was the one who survived in the end. In the 10 over years before I met you, I thought more than once, if I had known earlier, I would not have resisted, and let him eat me up. This disgusting and boring life, it was fine to give it to him. But now, I'm really glad that I had that crazy desire to live, lucky that I survived, no matter how dirty and unbearable the process was. If it was for you, it was worth it." Gu Mingming's hands that were hugging Elvis were trembling. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. Elvis hooked Gu Mingming's chin, his gaze as deep as the sea of stars, so deep that it made one sink in. "You promised, you are not allowed to pity me." Gu Mengmeng shook her head, smiled and said in the most gentle voice, "I'm just very touched, so to meet me, you did such a brave thing." "Brave? Ha, you can always think of some words to beautify those ugly things, but I like them very much." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's lips. It was a light and sweet kiss, without any lust, only full of love and tenderness. Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's gaze that signaled for him to continue and felt rather helpless. He really did not feel that there was anything to talk about these past events. It was not like they were heroic deeds. But he couldn't deny that no matter how insignificant these things were, after sharing them with her, he had never felt so relaxed before. It was as if the rubbish in his memories was being poured out bit by bit with every word he said. His whole heart brightened up. Smiling, Elvis tried his best to use a relaxed tone to talk about the cruel past. "My eyes were bloodshot from killing and I was thrown into the wolf's den. At that time, I seemed to be at the age of Jiaoyu and the rest. Hunger, pain, and fear were all I had at that time. Out of topic, today is White Valentine. Happy White Valentine's Day, babies. Remember to buy some chocolates in return for the flowers I received last month. If there's a boy you like, it's time to confess then." Today's update ended. Chapter 8:11. It was either fight or die. I had no other way out. Elvis rested his chin lightly on Gu Mingming's head. Countless details of the fight, biting, bleeding and escaping from death flashed past his mind. He only said one conclusion. That pack of wolves ended up as my food. And when I came out of the wolf cave, I had just turned 1 year old and had just transformed into a first-level beast. Gu Mengmeng could almost imagine what Elvis must have looked like after crawling out of the wolf cave. He must have been like the Asura who had returned from hell, crushing everyone's hopes and bearing the burden of destruction like Satan, descending upon every enemy. "Thank you for being alive." Gu Mengmeng pressed her face against Elvis's chest and listened to his heartbeat. She was not afraid, only glad that he had not been defeated in that kind of suffering and had waited until she met him. If she had missed him, how regretful would her life be? Silly girl, why are you thanking me? Elvis lifted Gu Mingming's little face and kissed her brow. His gaze was filled with an inexplicable sincerity, as if he was not only looking at his own female, but also at the only light in his life. It was you who brought me out of that darkness and malevolence. If I had not met you, I would probably still be killing out of boredom, wasting away my life and waiting for death to descend upon me. You were the one who pulled me out from the abyss of despair. Why are you thanking me now? Gu Mingming's heart pounded. She did not retort but just smiled. We were both groping our way along the lonely and helpless path. Then, we were lucky enough to meet each other. We lit up the hope in each other's eyes and lit up our lives together. We are a family that will always be together. So, we don't have to say thank you to each other, right? Elvis's heart melted into water at Gu Mingming's words. He kissed the side of Gu Mingming's face, feeling speechless sweetness. Hubby. Gu Mengmeng hesitated for a moment before saying. I feel that I cannot forgive Peter, then I will kill him. Elvis's reply was calm and certain, without the slightest bit of hesitation. It was as if Gu Mengmeng had only asked him to pluck a wild flower and he had said okay. Gu Mengmeng shook her head. That's not what I meant. Ha! Elvis glanced sideways at Gu Mengmeng and asked with a gentle gaze. Gu Mengmeng said, although Natalie and Peter are your parents, I don't want to stand on the moral high ground and demand that you must forgive them. Even I want to hack Peter into 1,000 pieces to vent my anger after hearing about your childhood experiences, not to mention you, who had personally experienced it all. Only when a knife cut into his own flesh would he know how painful the bloody wound was. So, no matter what your decision is, I will support you unconditionally, because only you have the right to decide whether to forgive or not. Chapter 8:12. After listening to Gu Mingming's narration, Elvis's face did not show any signs of emotion. Even his heart was calm. His desire for familial love had long been extinguished in those 3 huge pits. Now that he suddenly had a mother who was willing to endure such humiliation for him, the only thought in his heart was, actually, there was really no need for that. Slightly heaving a sigh of relief, Elvis gently took the cup of water from Leah and fed Gu Mengmeng some water. Seeing that her lips had moistened a little, his brows relaxed and he smiled softly. Xiao Meng, what do you want me to do? Elvis asked softly. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment. She shook her head and placed her finger on Elvis's chest. She said softly, I want you to follow your heart. Whatever your heart desires, just do. Elvis held Gu Mingming's little hand and pressed it down gently. Her soft palm was placed on the outside of the second rib on his left side. A low and hoarse voice came out of his mouth and landed directly on Gu Mingming's chest. Other than you, there is nothing else in this position. Gu Mengmeng blushed slightly. She stared straight into Elvis's eyes, as if she was about to be sucked into them. To be honest, I don't care about what happens to them. I don't think they need my forgiveness. But, if it can make you feel better by forgiving them, then I will forgive them. Gu Mengmeng lowered her head. She could not tell what was going on in her heart. Subconsciously, she still hoped that Elvis could forgive his parents. Because then, he could truly break free from his childhood nightmare. But if this forgiveness was based on her feelings, was there any meaning to it? Sighing, Gu Mengmeng looked up and said, let's not talk about whether I forgive them or not. The most important thing now is not to let Natalie die just like that. Alright, let's think of a way to save her. Elvis had always been indulgent towards Gu Mengmeng. He would accompany her to do whatever she wanted to do, even if it was through a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames. Gu Mengmeng did not say anything more. She just obediently leaned against Elvis's chest and refused to leave. Elvis allowed her to rely on him. But since they wanted to save Natalie, they could not leave this place for the time being. Exchanging a look with Leah, they didn't say anything and just stood up and walked back in unison. Elvis was once a member of this group of stray beasts, and this base was an old one for the stray beasts. It had not been moved for decades, and no regular tribe dared to provoke them, so the original caves were basically preserved. However, the cave that Elvis used to live in had already changed owners a few times. Now, there was only a second-level jackal living inside. It looked sinister and wretched, but it was a sensible one. Seeing that it could not afford to offend the person, it tucked its tail between its legs and vacated the place. Elvis and Leah dug the cave deeper and more spacious. After all, they were going to stay here for a while and they did not want Gu Mengmeng to suffer. Gu Mengmeng sat on a tree branch outside the cave and watched her two men perspire profusely. She felt a strange softness in her heart. They had all experienced so many cruel things, but they had grown into the warmest appearance. This in itself should be something worth celebrating. Chapter 8:13. Gu Mengmeng blushed and glared at Ian. You are the one in heat. Your whole family is in heat. Ian snorted. I am the only one in my family. Gu Mengmeng was rendered speechless. She bit her lower lip and scrunched up her nose, making a threatening expression. Ian rolled his eyes in disdain. He leaned to the side in a sickly manner. You also know that the fox in your family will secrete a high concentration of fox seductive fragrance once it mates. The last time you guys got excited, the entire Saint Nazir was boiling for 3 days. If you guys continue to be affectionate here, Wabi and I will have to slaughter the entire stray beast horde to protect you guys. I did some calculations when I was patrolling. There are a few hundred of them here. It will take a while to chop them down like carrots. It will be very tiring. Do me a favor and have some integrity when you are abusing dogs, alright? Gu Mengmeng blushed furiously at Ian's words. She spat at him. I told you I am not in heat. Ian snorted disdainfully and said, Look at yourself, the way you look at your two males. Their eyeballs are about to fall out. Also, you are drooling so much that there are puddles under the tree. Do you see that? Isn't this called in heat? Gu Mengmeng instinctively touched her chin. There was no drool at all. You are just a cheap mouth. Be careful that no females will want you in the future. Ian shrugged. Anyway, there are already people in the Eagle Owl tribe who have mated. As long as I can produce cubs and not exterminate the tribe, I will have not let down my ancestors. Gu Mengmeng gave Ian a fake smile. If your ancestors knew that you are so unmotivated, they would probably crawl out of their graves and strangle you to death. Ian did not comment. Anyway, you just have to control yourself. Got it. So annoying. Gu Mengmeng turned her head and ignored Ian. Elvis and Leah were not weak. It was as easy as cutting tofu for them to dig a cave. Anyway, they were not going to stay there for long, so it did not need to be especially big. They just did not want Gu Mengmeng to suffer, so they took care of the details. In one afternoon, the cave had been completely renovated. There were no traces or smells of anyone else staying here before Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng inside. The sky was already dark and Gu Mengmeng was extremely sleepy. She only ate some roasted meat perfunctorily for dinner before falling into a deep sleep in Elvis's arms. The next morning, Peter rushed anxiously to where Gu Mengmeng and the rest were staying. Wabi was blocking them from the outside. Peter was not Wabi's match even in his peak condition, not to mention now that he was crippled. Moreover, he was here to ask for help, so he naturally did not dare to barge in. When Gu Mengmeng finally woke up and walked out of the cave while stretching, he shouted, Great messenger, please save Natalie. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment before she walked up to Peter. The panic in his eyes was not feigned. It seemed like Natalie's condition was really not good. Gu Mengmeng looked down and said, I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth. Peter gritted his teeth and stomped his feet, as if he had made up his mind. I'll tell you everything. Gu Mengmeng didn't reply and just looked at Peter quietly. Chapter 8:14. Gu Mengmeng didn't look surprised at all. Instead, it was Elvis and Leah who looked rather startled. You guessed it. Elvis knew that Peter was outside. How could he let Gu Mengmeng meet him alone? So within 2 seconds of Gu Mengmeng leaving the cave, he was already following behind her. Seeing her expression, he knew that she already had a good idea. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said things like, I can't help you if you don't tell the truth, to Peter. He knew that this little fellow had long hardened her heart to save Natalie. So even if Peter didn't say anything, Gu Mengmeng wouldn't just stand by and watch. Gu Mengmeng nodded and didn't deny it. She directly answered, when the monsoon season was about to end, the stray beasts and Natalie went on a hunger strike. It's not hard to guess when you put it all together. Leo lazily rested an arm on Elvis's face, looking as if he was still in a daze. His long and narrow eyes were filled with the sleepiness of the morning. His slightly hoarse voice landed beside Gu Mengmeng's ears. Let me think. You mean that when we were attacked by stray beasts on the way back from Sauder to Saint Nazaire, it was Cole who transferred people from here? Gu Mengmeng's face turned red. It sounded like a question, but Leah had used a declarative tone to reveal the truth. Without waiting for Gu Mengmeng's reply, Leah hooked Gu Mengmeng's face and kissed her gently on the tip of her brows. His low, hoarse voice was filled with joy and affection. In my opinion, you are the real little fox. You managed to guess it with just a few clues. Leah and Gu Mengmeng's conversation was like Tai Chi, but Elvis and Peter weren't fools. If they still didn't understand what was going on, they could forget about being leaders for so many years. Peter frowned deeply. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness and determination as he said, Do you mean that Cole was the one who turned Natalie into this? Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, yes and no. Peter glared at Gu Mengmeng, unhappy with her attitude. Elvis stepped forward and stood between Peter and Gu Mengmeng. His murderous aura permeated the air. Control your expression. Otherwise, your female will be the one to suffer. At the mention of Natalie, it was as if someone had grabbed Peter's Achilles heel. His arrogance was obviously deflated. If it had been someone else, he would have laughed coldly and retorted sarcastically, returning the same words to the other party. Threatening people was a skill that stray beasts did not need to learn to master. Unfortunately, the other party was a female who could crush him to death with one hand, and he had a favor to ask of her. Looking away, Peter said coldly, That is your mother, beast. Elvis chuckled. I don't care. You. Peter was furious, not because he was under someone else's control, but because his heart ached for Elvis. Natalie had sacrificed so much for Elvis, but Elvis had no intention of cherishing her. Elvis lifted his head and looked condescendingly at Peter. It's not a wise decision to provoke someone you can't afford to offend. Peter, have you really gone senile? Peter clenched his fists. He didn't continue arguing with Elvis. He heaved a long sigh of relief. Great messenger, please tell me. Did Natalie become like this because of Cole? Chapter 8:15. Gu Mengmeng didn't give Peter a chance to retort. She just said, if I'm not wrong, when he brought the stray beasts back alive, he also brought Natalie a piece of news. Elvis is now a 5th-level orc and his companions are all very powerful. His partner is the messenger of the beast deity and has inherited all the powers of the mighty beast king from the Snake King Valley. Everyone who was severely injured by his aura is the best proof. Cole is really making the best use of every step he takes. He must squeeze out every last bit of value. Peter wasn't as wise and far-sighted as Leah, nor was he like Gu Meng Meng, a transmigrator who had watched many television dramas and learned theories. But as long as it concerned Natalie, there was nothing he couldn't understand. After all, his entire life had been spent on researching that one person. Natalie hadn't made a fuss all these years. She was as quiet as a soulless doll. She clearly didn't care about anything, but insisted on living on. She wanted Peter to keep his promise to her and not hurt her only remaining son. But Cole had come to tell her that her son was now so powerful and had a partner like Gu Meng Meng. Peter was no longer a threat to him. Peter could no longer hurt Elvis. This was as good as indirectly telling Natalie that she could die now. There was no longer any meaning for her to grit her teeth and live on. Peter clenched his fists tightly. His expression was twisted and malevolent. If Cole was standing in front of him now, even if they were both fifth-level orcs, he would definitely take Cole down with him. No wonder Natalie, who had no interest in anything, suddenly said that she wanted to go out for a walk. He had foolishly thought that Cole had really convinced her and made her accept him. So it turned out that she had only gone over to confirm if Cole's words were true. So it turned out that she was just abandoning him again. The only difference was that this time, she was even more ruthless than the previous time. She wanted to end her own life to abandon him. But even so, he still couldn't bear to. You have a way to save her, right? Peter asked Gu Meng Meng. Although it was a question, he was very sure of it. Since Gu Meng Meng had already guessed everything, there was only one reason for her to force him to reveal Cole's identity. She could save Natalie, but he had to pay a price. And what she told Cole was just to force him to show his sincerity. Any condition, any price, as long as you can save Natalie, I'll agree. Including letting her leave you? Gu Meng Meng asked nonchalantly. Peter clenched his fists so tightly that he almost crushed his bones. Gritting his teeth, his eyes were bloodshot as if he had been stabbed by a sharp knife. He squeezed out word by word from between his teeth. If this is the only way for her to get better, I am willing to let her go. Chapter 8:16. Peter's tightly clenched fists relaxed slightly. He smiled bitterly. Anyway, she has already hated me for so many years. There are so many things to hate that I can't even count them all. It doesn't matter if there's one more. Gu Meng Meng nodded. It's good that you have this awareness. Peter hesitated for a moment before asking. What do you want to do? Will she be in danger? How upset will she be this time? Gu Meng Meng tapped her chin lightly, as if deliberating how to reply to Peter. She thought for a moment before smiling. She probably won't be upset. At most, she will be so angry that she wants to strangle you. Peter was taken aback at first, before he smiled. If I am the only one injured, you can go ahead and do it without any qualms. As long as the effects are good enough, it's not a problem for me to be injured. Gu Meng Meng believed Peter's words. She knew better than anyone else how blindly loyal the males in the beast world could be in the face of love, right? Gu Meng Meng said, let me warn you first. I plan to throw a bucket of dirty water at you. Peter nodded and stood still. Come on. Gu Meng Meng's face froze. She looked awkwardly at Peter, who looked like he was waiting for the dirty water to be thrown at him. She sighed to herself. Communication was really a problem. Taking a deep breath, Gu Meng Meng adjusted her expression and said, Elvis and I have 4 sons. One of them was drugged by Cole and was in a coma for a long time. He only woke up recently. But even though he regained consciousness, he is still under the control of the drug. Without Cole's antidote, he cannot return to my side. So, this matter, I plan to put the blame on you. Peter's face was blank. He was not sensitive to anything other than Natalie. What did Natalie have to do with Elvis's son being drugged and controlled by Cole? Gu Meng Meng looked at his confused face. She knew that this man's emotional quotient was really low. He couldn't even see through such a simple matter. Sighing, Gu Mengmeng adopted the attitude of, don't be so serious with a fool. You just have to remember that you had a part in this. When Natalie looks for you, you just have to act as yourself and stick to your character settings. Understand? Peter nodded in confusion. As long as Natalie could live, he was willing to do anything. However, didn't they say that they were going to slander him? Not splashing again. Sigh, although Elvis was his son and was outstanding in all aspects, his taste in females was really poor. Why did he end up picking a weird one after so many choices? This was definitely not because of him, but most likely because of Natalie. After all, Natalie's only shortcoming was her poor taste in choosing partners. Otherwise, why would she look down on him but care so much about those good-for-nothings? Gu Mengmeng didn't care about what Peter thought and just followed Elvis and Leah back to the cave. After a simple breakfast, she let Elvis carry her to Natalie's cave. Elvis had promised to cooperate with Gu Mengmeng to save Natalie, so he would not go back on his word. So no matter what she said, he would cooperate. When the two of them entered the cave, Natalie was still lying quietly like yesterday, as if she hadn't even turned over once. Upon hearing Gu Mengmeng's words, Natalie's eyelashes quivered but she did not open her eyes. Chapter 8:17. Whenever she could not see him, she would dream of knowing how her son was doing. Had he grown taller? Had he eaten his fill? Would he be bullied by others? But now that he had appeared, she did not have the courage to open her eyes to look at him. How was she going to tell him that she was the cause of all his suffering? Gu Mengmeng turned back and gently pulled Elvis's hand over, placing it over Natalie's. Elvis was very resistant. It was not that he could not forgive Natalie, but he did not like females other than Gu Mengmeng touching his body. Especially when Gu Mengmeng personally placed his hand over another female's hand. This made Elvis very unhappy. His brows were tightly furrowed and his eyes looked as if they were about to burst into flames. When Nina had hugged Lee's waist, Gu Mengmeng had almost gone crazy and wanted to kill him. His hand could be touched by anyone. Every time Leah said, "My Gu Mengmeng does not like anyone touching me," it pierced Elvis's heart. He thought she had a serious obsession with her own males, so he was as strict with himself as Leah. Other than during battles, he did not allow anyone else to touch him. But it turned out that he had been thinking too much. Xiaomeng only cared about Leah. Elvis's heart was already overflowing with jealousy, but Gu Mengmeng was completely oblivious. She really could not be blamed for this. The person lying in front of her was Elvis's biological mother. "Natalie, actually, I have a favor to ask of you." Gu Mengmeng's tone was slow and it sounded like she was in a difficult position. It was not a small matter for the messenger of the beast deity to use the word favor. So the moment Gu Mengmeng said those words, Natalie's heart trembled violently. Although she did not open her eyes, her furrowed brows indicated that she was listening very seriously. "Actually, we are here to look for Peter." Gu Mengmeng could feel Natalie's hands turning cold and trembling the moment she heard that name. She could not bear to do it, but what else could she do? Qi Xian is a child of mine and Elvis's. He was drugged by a stray beast and is now being held hostage. His whereabouts are unknown and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Gu Mengmeng did not explain further, but Natalie slowly opened her eyes. The moment her eyelids fluttered open, tears fell from her lashes. That gaze accurately landed on Elvis's face, filled with guilt and despair. With a hoarse and thick nasal voice, as weak as gossamer, he only said one sentence, "Get Peter here, I want to see him." Gu Mengmeng knew that she did not need to say anything else. Natalie had already imagined a scene where a grandfather kidnapped his grandson and tortured him in every possible way. Even if she had to come up with something, she would never be able to come up with a more brutal scene than the one in her mind. Nodding, Gu Meng Meng led Elvis out of Natalie's cave. The moment Elvis retracted his hand, he strode away. Chapter 8:18. How should she put it? In Gu Mingming's eyes, Peter was a ruthless and ambitious character. He did not care about right or wrong, life or death, others or himself. Other than Natalie, he did not care about anything else. But such a person was now wearing the flustered expression of a young lad experiencing his first awakening of love. It was as if he was holding a love letter and was about to confess to the person he liked for the first time. Just how much love did he have for someone who tortured his own son to death without batting an eyelid to reveal such an expression? Gu Meng Meng couldn't help smiling. It seemed like that weak female in the cave who could be blown away by a gust of wind was much more powerful than this murderous male in front of her. Gu Meng Meng and Peter did not acknowledge each other and just brushed past each other. The moment they exited the cave, Leah hugged Gu Mingming's waist. He used his chin to point at Elvis, who was standing with his back facing them. What did you do to him? Why do you look like you've seen through the mortal world? Gu Meng Meng tilted her head and looked at Elvis's back. She felt an inexplicable sense of pressure. She had already discussed with him about Natalie's matter before they came. Why did he not have such a huge reaction? Could it be that he could not take the blow of seeing his own mother? I'll go take a look. Gu Meng Meng broke free from Lee's arms and walked behind Elvis. Elvis knew that Gu Meng Meng had come over. Even if he did not turn back to look at her, every cell in his body was involuntarily monitoring her every move. He knew at the moment she came out of the cave. Elvis. Gu Meng Meng tugged at Elvis's arm gently. Elvis turned his head to the other side, his rejection obvious. Gu Meng Meng was taken aback. He did not look like he was upset over Natalie's matter. Instead, he looked like he was angry at her. But, why? She did not know what she had done wrong, but Gu Meng Meng felt inexplicably guilty. Because Elvis had never been angry at her. No matter how many unreasonable things she had done, he had always indulged her. What was wrong with him today? Gu Meng Meng was at a loss. She tugged at Elvis's arm and shook it. She called out sweetly, "Hubby." Elvis remained unmoved. He turned his head to the other side and even started to withdraw his hand from Gu Mingming's grasp. Was he really angry? Gu Meng Meng finally experienced the helplessness Elvis felt every time he saw her angry. He would say sincerely, "Xiao Meng, I was wrong. Although I don't know what I did wrong, but it must be my fault that you are so angry. Tell me where I did wrong, I will definitely change." That was probably what she was feeling right now. Pursing her lips, Gu Meng Meng looked up at the back of Elvis's head and sniffled, "If you dare to shake me off, I will cry." Elvis suddenly turned around and met Gu Mingming's misty eyes. The panic rising in his blue pupils could not be described with words. If there was anything in this world that could easily control Elvis, it would be Gu Meng Meng. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't bear to see her cry. He reached out a hand to touch her little face to comfort her, but his hand froze in mid-air. This hand had just been touched by another female. It was too dirty. Gu Meng Meng was taken aback. She stared fixedly at Elvis's long and slender hand with distinct joints. She looked up in confusion and asked, "It's clearly clean, how is it dirty?" "It was touched by others." "Isn't it dirty?" Elvis stared straight at Gu Meng Meng with some sadness and disappointment. "Or, are you only concerned about whether Leah is clean, and as for me? I don't care." His blue eyes were filled with an urgent desire, as if he was saying, "I beg you, lie to me one more time. Deny it, quickly deny it. Aside from the topic, that, my son is in a bad mood today. I need to coax him." So, that was the end of today's update. Chapter 8:20. Gu Meng Meng stared blankly at Elvis's hand, then at his eyes, then at his hand, then at his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she probed, "You are throwing a tantrum because I let Natalie touch you just now." Elvis was unwilling to admit it, so he retracted his gaze and looked elsewhere. Gu Mengmeng burst out laughing, the tears in her eyes evaporating instantly. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's waist fearlessly and said, "Ah, so you are jealous. Are you dumb? Natalie is your mother beast, her love for you is the purest and cleanest, how can you say that you are dirty after being touched by her?" Elvis frowned, clearly not buying Gu Mengmeng's explanation. Now that Gu Mengmeng knew the crux of the problem, she was no longer sullen. She climbed onto Elvis's body with both her hands and legs. Although he did not take the initiative to hug her, he did not have any intention of avoiding her. He even subconsciously used his hand to support her, afraid that she would not be able to climb steadily and fall. Gu Mengmeng hung onto Elvis's body like a monkey, kissing his lips over and over again. She said, "Do you have a conscience to say that I don't care about you? I almost killed Ellie when he hooked onto your beast skin dress the other time, have you forgotten?" Elvis's heart skipped a beat. He recalled the first time he met Ellie, when Ellie intentionally said ambiguous words to make Gu Mengmeng misunderstand him, but Gu Mengmeng used her actions to slap Ellie in the face. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Who said that his Xiao Meng had never been jealous because of him? She also minded others touching him. Gu Mengmeng said softly, "My hands are sore, are you really not going to hug me? I am going to fall. It will definitely hurt if I fall from such a high height." With that, Gu Mengmeng closed her eyes with a look as if she was ready to sacrifice herself for a martyr. Then, she suddenly let go and fell without any warning. But, would she fall from hanging on to Elvis's body? What a joke. Her body reacted faster than her brain. Gu Mengmeng had only let go of Elvis's neck for less than half a second when Elvis's large hand had already caught her but firmly. Gu Mengmeng smiled slyly and kissed Elvis's face. She said, "I knew you couldn't bear to drop me." Elvis did not say anything and just frowned with a bad expression. He was pleased that she was willing to coax him. But he could not risk his own safety. Gu Mengmeng cupped his face with both hands and said, "Hubby, I am actually very petty. If it weren't for the fact that Natalie really doesn't want to live anymore, and you're the only key to unlocking her will to live, I wouldn't have let her touch you even if she was your mother. Just this once, take it as me repaying my debt of gratitude. In the future, if anyone dares to extend their claws towards you, I will directly chop them off." Looking at Gu Mengmeng pretending to be fierce, Elvis's gaze softened. Elvis held Gu Mengmeng's little hand and brought the back of his hand to his nose to sniff. After confirming that it was really just her scent, he smiled in satisfaction and said, "Very fragrant, very sweet." Gu Mengmeng's eyes were filled with tears of joy. Before she could finish her sentence, Elvis pulled her into his arms. He kissed her collarbone and said, "Don't push me to others in the future, all right?" Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "Don't push me to others anymore, all right?" Gu Mengmeng smiled. She wanted to say that was her mother and not someone else. Chapter 8:23. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng up unhappily and stared at her hand. "Touching others in front of me. Do you think I am dead?" Gu Mengmeng didn't mind Elvis's overbearing way of speaking. Instead, she enjoyed it. Hubby was mighty and domineering, wasn't he? The little dear's heart was pounding wildly. Smiling sweetly, she tilted her head and looked at Elvis with adoration. "Wow, my hubby is so handsome." Elvis couldn't keep his dark expression any longer. He chuckled. "I am handsome and you still touch others." Gu Mengmeng blushed. Was she being teased by her hubby in front of her mother-in-law? Sneaking a glance at Natalie, she realized that Natalie was completely dumbfounded. She looked at Elvis and herself as if she had been struck by lightning. There was fear and uneasiness in her eyes, and she looked like she was about to cry. Gu Mengmeng found it very strange. Peter and Natalie seemed to have had a huge fight just now, to the point of almost hitting each other. But Natalie had stubbornly held back her tears. Now, why was she crying? Could it be that seeing Elvis flirting with her reminded her of her dead partner, so her heart ached? But that shouldn't be the case. That gaze was clearly one of fear. What was there to be afraid of? Still looking. Elvis was unhappy that someone had drawn Gu Mingming's gaze away from his face. Regardless of gender, it made him furious. Gu Mengmeng felt that if she didn't pacify him, Elvis might explode in anger. She didn't want Elvis to be jealous of some fake and inferior product again. So she cupped Elvis's face with both hands and kissed him. I won't look. My eyes and my heart are all yours. My sweetheart. Even though he knew that she was fooling around again, Elvis still enjoyed the sweetness in his heart. Seeing him smile, Gu Mengmeng knew that she had succeeded in pacifying him. So she struck while the iron was hot. Hubby, I want to tell you something. He knew that she must have a motive for being so unaccountably solicitous. Gu Mengmeng blinked cutely. I saw grapes on the way back. I want to eat grapes. On the way back, he did see wild grapevines on a cliff. There were bunches of grapes hanging on them. They were so purple that they were almost black. They looked delicious. But she didn't bother then. She had wanted to call Leah, Wabi, and Ian to pluck some for them to eat. For now, she would use this reason to distract Elvis. Grapes. She wanted to eat, so she asked her male to find it. It was normal. But he did not say anything when he saw her on the way back, nor when he met Leah at the door. But he just had to say it now. If Elvis could not tell that she was trying to send him away on purpose, then he would be a fool. However, seeing how greedy she was, he couldn't bear to disappoint her. Even though he knew that she had ulterior motives, he still nodded his head and went to the place she had described to find the fruit called grapes that she wanted to eat. After Elvis left, Gu Mengmeng sat beside Natalie. Natalie's emotions calmed down a lot, but she looked at Gu Mengmeng cautiously, as if she was in a dilemma. Finally, she opened her mouth and said, Can you not abandon Elvis? Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She pointed at herself and asked, Me? Abandon Elvis? Why should I abandon Elvis? Chapter 8:24. Natalie straightened her body and knelt beside Gu Mengmeng. She was hesitant and timid, but she still held on to Gu Mengmeng's little hand shakily. Her fingertips were cold and did not have any flesh at all. There was only a thin layer of skin wrapped around the bones, and it had a weight that could not be ignored. Elvis suffered a lot when he was young and never had a day of relaxation. He had to be cold and flawless, or else he had to die. This established the flaw in his character. He was not as good as other males at coaxing you with gentle words. But he treated you sincerely, he must be. Moreover, he is already a fifth-level beast. Even if you don't like him, don't abandon him on account of his strong fighting power, all right? Natalie looked up at Gu Mengmeng with a pleading expression. Tears were welling up in her eyes, as if they would fall off in clusters if Gu Mengmeng shook her head slightly. You met him for the first time today after his first month. How do you know that he loves me? Gu Mengmeng asked softly. Natalie was taken aback. She lowered her head and said, Gu Mengmeng said, You don't know, right? You only said that out of a mother's instinct to protect him and not let him get hurt. You don't care whether he loves me or not, right? Actually, Natalie could not completely deny Gu Mengmeng's words, because in her heart, she really thought that way. But this was not the whole story. Natalie was afraid that her words would not help Elvis and instead bring him trouble, so she hurriedly explained, a person's eyes will not lie. No matter how fierce his gaze looks, the gentleness behind it cannot be hidden. His eyes, from the beginning to the end, can only see you, that's all. You are already his entire world. He is just not good at expressing himself. I beg you, give him a chance. Even if you don't dote on him, just don't abandon him. Gu Mengmeng pulled her collar and showed Elvis's mating mark on her collarbone to Natalie. She said, Elvis is my first partner. I love him very much and will never abandon him. What's more, I didn't think he looked at me fiercely. On the contrary, I saw a heavy love in his eyes. He is a man who is willing to risk his life for me. He is worthy of me entrusting my life to him. Natalie was taken aback. She stared at Gu Mengmeng for a long time before her tears finally fell. Choking with sobs, he said, You are the messenger of the beast deity after all. You see things more clearly than me. Gu Mengmeng released her collar and hugged her legs. She pressed her face against her knees and tilted her head to look at Natalie. So it's not like you don't know anything. Natalie smiled bitterly, as if she had opened up her heart for the first time. I've been locked up here for 17 years. In these 17 years, I've seen too many females captured by stray beasts being treated. The bloody reality is laid out in front of me. Chapter 8:25. I often think that if I had begged him to take me away when I was pregnant, my children would not have died. If I had stayed by his side obediently on the first day he caught me, without making a fuss or running away, maybe my partners would not have died. If I had not cut off a piece of my own skin so decisively after he forced me to mate with him, without even giving him a chance to explain before mating with him and turning him into a stray beast, maybe I would still be living peacefully in the tribe, with a strong and loving partner, and adorable children. If I could have overcome the fear in my heart at the start and listened to his confession patiently, maybe he would not have been forced to mate with me that way. If there really is an if, all this could not have happened. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. Gu Mengmeng held on to Natalie's wrist and said, Loving you is not an excuse to hurt you. None of this is your fault. Natalie looked up, her tears trapped in her eyes. Wasn't it her fault? How could it not be her fault? Gu Mengmeng knew the struggle in Natalie's heart. This was the self-denial of one's own helplessness towards reality. Unable to change the world, you had no way to complain about the unfairness of the heavens, so you could only search for the reason internally, constantly thinking, It's all my fault, it's all my fault, it must be because I am not good enough, that's why it happened. Gu Mengmeng held on to Natalie's shoulders and looked into her eyes, saying, The past has already happened, we can't change it. There are no ifs in this world, everyone has to pay the price for the decisions they make now. It's meaningless to live in the past, you have to focus on the present and the future. Natalie's face was blank, she could not understand what Gu Mengmeng was saying, but she felt something in her heart collapse. Gu Mengmeng continued, He has the right to like you, but that was his own decision, so he should bear the consequences himself. We can't be responsible for everyone who likes us, we can only be responsible for ourselves. Gu Mengmeng held up Natalie's hand and placed it on her chest, saying, Ask your heart, do you like him now? Of course Natalie knew who Gu Mengmeng was talking about. She bit her lower lip and hesitated, but still shook her head. There are so many lives between us, how can we like it? Every day we spend together is just torture to each other. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, If you don't like him, then this will be easy. Natalie looked up at Gu Mengmeng in confusion. Gu Mengmeng continued, I'll bring you back to Saint Nazaire with me. Natalie was taken aback and instinctively avoided Gu Mengmeng's eyes. But Qishuan's antidote, Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders nonchalantly and said, It doesn't matter, I will save my own son myself. At most, I'll gather the 5 treasures and ask Cole for the antidote. I'm sure Cole won't dare to trick me. Natalie pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She didn't shake her head or nod. She seemed to be deep in thought. Gu Mengmeng did not rush her and just said, you also know that I have the power of a beast king. If you are afraid that he will come to Saint Nazir to pester you, I can actually go out and kill him now. It's just a matter of time to catch my breath, once and for all. As Gu Meng Meng said that, she wanted to stand up, but Natalie grabbed her wrist. Aside from the topic, it's time to promote the correct values again. My babies, you must remember. Forcing girls to have sex with you for any reason is unforgivable. Don't believe him when he says he loves you. If he really loves you, he won't bear to hurt you like this. This was the only thing that could not be forgiven. Master, the last two words were said right beside Gu Mingming's ear. His warm breath carried the character's immersion into her heart. Master-servant play. Again with this kind of trick. Gu Mengmeng pushed Li's shoulders away. If she did not push him away, Gu Mingming's heart would jump out. This fellow always had a way to challenge her shameless limits. But Gu Mengmeng was not immune to his methods. Clearing her throat, Gu Mengmeng turned her face to the side. You guys are not willing to say. Do you want me to ask Peter? Gu Mengmeng lifted her chin and pushed Elvis. With her current abilities, no one could hold her if she was unwilling. I didn't abandon you. You're still my partners. It's just that I don't like you anymore. Xiao Meng. Elvis's brows furrowed into a dead knot as he said angrily, You're not allowed to not love me. Gu Mengmeng shrugged. I love him, how can I not love him? Out of topic, yeah, my daughter-in-law is going to throw a tantrum. I'm going to move a stool and some watermelons to watch the show. Does anyone want to join? Chapter 829. But, you guys are getting more and more used to hiding things from me. The previous incident with Cole was decided by the two of you privately, saying that you were afraid that I would spoil the plan due to my impatience. Seeing that it was your first offense, I didn't hold it against you. But this time, you guys are doing the same thing again, hiding something from me even though you guys clearly have something going on. Gu Mingming's tone was very calm, as if she was just stating the facts. But this attitude made Elvis and Leah at a loss of what to do. If she threw a tantrum, they would still have 100 ways to coax her. What they were most afraid of was her not throwing a tantrum. In a relationship, lying is the beginning of a breakdown. You guys will slowly start to have secrets that I don't know, and I will become more and more paranoid. The cycle will repeat until either I break down or you guys break down. The final outcome will always be death. Since that's the case, why don't we cut our losses in time? From now on, I will learn to live independently and not rely on you guys for everything. I'll learn how to ignore your unspeakable secrets and live my own life. Xiao Meng. Elvis growled. When Gu Mengmeng hardened her heart, why would she be afraid of Elvis's expression? Not giving him a chance to interrupt, she continued, but don't worry, just because I still love you guys now, I won't be so heartless to turn you guys into stray beasts. I will always keep the mark on my body, and you guys will still be my partners in name. Elvis held Gu Mingming's waist tightly once again, refusing to let go despite Gu Mengmeng pushing him. He frowned and said, If you don't want me, you might as well kill me. Elvis looked down at Gu Mingming's hand that was pushing against his chest. He used a lot of strength, but with Gu Mingming's current abilities, it was not impossible for her to push him away. But to push him away, she had to use enough strength to break at least 2 of his ribs. That pair of fair little hands were hammering and pushing against his chest, but she could not bear to do so. You obviously can't bear to leave me, right? The corners of his lips curled up slightly, his smile carrying a hint of mischief. His blue eyes were filled with mirth as he lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's lips. He allowed her to bite him, allowed her to behave atrociously, but he could not stop her from escaping. The kiss lasted for a long time until Gu Mengmeng finally stopped throwing a tantrum or resisting. Elvis then slowly released her and used his thumb to wipe his lips. He lowered his head to look at the 2 drops of saliva on his thumb and chuckled. You bit me for half a day, but there is not even a scratch on my skin. You still don't want to admit that your heart aches for me? Yeah, I just can't bear to hurt you guys, so you guys can bully me. Gu Meng Meng glared at them, feeling a little angry. Elvis's heart ached for her aggrieved look and he said helplessly, how could we bear to bully you? It's just that there are some things that will upset you. We will solve them. You just have to be happy. Gu Meng Meng hung her head and said, you're still unwilling to tell me even at this stage. Elvis's heart tightened. He looked at Leah and finally surrendered, don't be angry, I'll tell you all right. Gu Meng Meng looked up at Elvis and asked, do you think I'm throwing a tantrum just because I want to know about this? Elvis was taken aback, as if he did not understand what Gu Meng Meng meant. Gu Meng Meng sighed and shook her head. Forget it, I don't want to know anymore. You guys go out, I want to rest. Aside from the topic, most of the time, a girl throwing a tantrum was not because of the matter itself, but because of the other half's attitude. Unfortunately, most of the time, boys would never understand. Chapter 8:30. Elvis and Leah looked at each other. She was the one who made a big fuss and insisted on knowing. Now that they told her, she said she didn't want to know. Moreover, didn't they already agree to tell her? Why did she still have to chase them out? Gu Meng Meng looked at the 2 males who stood rooted to the ground. She waved her hands and said, if you guys aren't leaving, then I'll leave. I'll sleep outside tonight. Xiao Meng. Elvis pulled her back and locked her in his arms. Don't be angry, Leah, and I will listen to you. Today, we will guard you at the entrance. Be a good girl and sleep in the cave, all right? Gu Meng Meng's face turned red. Gu Meng Meng flung Elvis away and gestured a please gesture to chase them away. Elvis and Leah knew that Gu Meng Meng was really angry. They didn't want to make her even angrier. Hence, the 2 partners who were so famous in the beast world stood pitifully at the entrance of the cave. To be able to see Gu Meng Meng through the entrance, the 2 of them didn't avoid the sun. They let the afternoon sun burn their bodies as they guarded the entrance without moving an inch. Gu Meng Meng was really heartless. She turned her head and sprawled on the bed to take an afternoon nap. She only showed Elvis and Leah her back view. She didn't even turn her body. After a long while, the 2 of them who were listening carefully at the entrance knew that Gu Meng Meng had fallen asleep. They then sighed in disappointment and their shoulders slumped down unknowingly. The last time you chased me out of the cave was after you returned from the beauty pageant in Sauder. You found out that I created opportunities for you during winter. And that time, you didn't stay angry for so long. Elvis looked at Gu Meng Meng's back view and felt a little tormented. He was already used to her nestling in his arms when she slept. The way she slept in a daze always made his heart soften. If he wasn't around, would she fall onto the ground the moment she turned over? She was used to hugging his tail when she slept. Now that her arms were empty, would she not be able to sleep well? Leah smiled bitterly and said, yeah, I was envious when I saw you being chased out. At least you had the right to be chased out. But I was forbidden from getting close to you and refused to interact with you. I didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy. Elvis smiled helplessly and said, yeah, so you got what you wanted. Does it feel good to be kicked out? Leah smacked his lips, as if savoring it seriously. Then, he chuckled and said, in the past, we didn't seem to care much about where we slept. Why are we so obsessed with the cave now? Not being able to enter, makes my heart feel empty. Elvis's gaze was deep as he stared at the little person on the bed. What we are fixated on is not the cave, but the little person throwing a tantrum in the cave. Leah nodded in agreement. That's right. Once she gets angry, there's nothing we can do. Elvis's gaze contained a gentleness that even he himself could not detect. When his gaze lingered on Gu Mengmeng, it was filled with happiness. Being kicked out of the house by her was also a kind of happiness. After all, he didn't even have the chance to be expelled in the past. So, do you really intend to tell her about this? Li's brows were still furrowed. That matter, he did not want Meng Meng to know. Elvis glanced sideways at Leah. Do you have a better idea? Chapter 831. Elvis nodded. I can choose not to say, but I cannot lie. I promised her that I would not lie to her. Leah nodded and did not say anything else. He just turned to the side to start cooking. Elvis stood at the same spot and continued to stare at Gu Mengmeng silently. That petite body had such a strong attraction that nothing in this world could compare to her in his eyes. Sighing, Elvis shook his head in exasperation. Just like that, she stood at the top of the tree. When Gu Mengmeng stood up and stretched lazily, it was just a gentle action, but it instantly affected the emotions of the two people standing at the door. Gu Mengmeng, I cooked potato and meat paste. Can I bring it in for you to try? Leo leaned against the door and asked with a fawning expression. Gu Mengmeng ignored him as if she could not hear him. Leo was not dejected and continued as if he did not notice Gu Mengmeng ignoring him. Natalie's body is weak, so this is definitely suitable for her to eat. How about I accompany you to bring it over and you can eat with her there? Gu Mengmeng remained silent. Leo looked at Elvis. Elvis sighed and his gaze deepened. Something might have happened in Sauder. This sentence stunned Gu Mengmeng. She looked up into Elvis's eyes and pursed her thin lips tightly without saying a word. Elvis took a deep breath and continued. I always knew that the stray beasts had such a standard because they had the support of a mighty figure. But I only found out today that this mighty figure is Cole. Gu Mengmeng was stunned. The stray beast's backer was Cole. If even Elvis knew about it, it meant that it was not a recent incident. But wasn't Cole the previous leader of Sauder? The leader of the Messengers tribe was the backer of the stray beasts. Was this a plot of collusion between officials and bandits? Elvis could not bear to see Gu Mengmeng frown and did not want her to spend too much time pondering over Cole. Hence, he continued. The stray beasts' attacks on tribes may seem random, but it is not. They attacked tribes that were against Cole or had obstructed him in certain matters. They can be considered as Cole's secret force that helps him settle some shady matters. Gu Mengmeng frowned. She recalled that Cole had brought Qixuan somewhere after the dry season, and that he had not appeared for such a long time. Thinking back, the last time she saw him, he seemed to have asked her if the water source was ready and said that Sauder did not lack water. But later on, Gu Mengmeng dug her own well and did not take Cole's words to heart. But now that he thought about it, Elvis first mentioned that something might have happened to Sauder, then he mentioned that Cole was supporting the stray beasts behind the scenes. Elvis let out a long sigh and looked at Gu Mengmeng with a determined gaze, as if he was telling her, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Peter said that at the beginning of the dry season, Cole came back with a little wolf cub. He felt that the little wolf cub looked similar to me, and Cole seemed to treat him very well. He even said, "I can't let my precious son lack water." After that, he brought all the stray beasts of 4th level and above away, leaving only Peter to guard the camp. Gu Mengmeng took a deep breath. She did not need to guess to know that the wolf pup Cole was carrying was Qixuan. Sauder does not lack water. Chapter 832. Sauder only had Barit and Oakley guarding it. Even if the two of them worked together, they would not be Cole's match, not to mention that Cole had brought along stray beasts of 4th level and above. If Cole used Qixuan to threaten them, perhaps Barit and Oakley could only let him do whatever he wanted. Gu Mengmeng clenched her teeth and stood up to walk out. When she passed by Elvis, Elvis grabbed her arm and hugged her. Gu Mengmeng struggled a little, but Elvis hugged her even tighter. He said in a hoarse voice, Don't move, let me hug you for a while, just a while. Gu Meng Meng was stuck to Elvis's words. She had only taken an afternoon nap, but Gu Meng Meng felt as if she had been away from them for a long time. Elvis's deep and reserved voice resonated from his chest to Gu Meng Meng's ears. You are clearly right in front of me, but I still miss you so much. What should I do? I feel like I am sick. Gu Meng Meng's heart softened, but her expression did not soften. She said coldly, if you are sick, let Leah treat you. Elvis hooked Gu Meng Meng's little face and stared into her eyes. He can treat external injuries, but mental illnesses, medicine is ineffective. Gu Meng Meng turned her head and pulled her face back. If you have a mental illness, find someone who understands you to treat it. I think Leah is just the right person. Both of you are so close and have no secrets. You can open your hearts and have a chat. Just treat it as a psychological consultation. Maybe you will recover after the chat. Elvis carried Gu Meng Meng up. Gu Meng Meng instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. She wanted to retract her arms when she met his smiling eyes. But how could Elvis let her? A large hand held the back of her head and he kissed her on the lips. They lingered for a long time and were filled with love. But, only you are my medicine. You can treat my illness and take my life. Gu Meng Meng's heart was clenched. Her entire chest was trembling in response. On the other hand, Elvis had already stood at the entrance of the cave to reflect on himself for an entire afternoon. After hearing Gu Meng Meng's jealous words, if he still did not know why Gu Meng Meng was so angry that she chased them out, he could not continue being her first partner. Wiping Gu Meng Meng's lips that were stung by his kiss, Elvis said dotingly and indulgently, You are angry that I always hide things from you. I won't hide it from you in the future. Don't be angry, okay? Gu Meng Meng pursed her lips and her expression softened a little. But she still pretended to be confused and asked, Really? Or are you just trying to coax me? Everything I say to you is a promise, and I won't lie to you. Elvis kissed Gu Meng Meng's little face, which had turned into a steamed bun from anger. Having just woken up, her skin was tender and soft and the texture was extremely good. Moreover, I hid these things from you because I was afraid it would affect your mood. If you feel worse because you don't know, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? I won't do it again. Gu Meng Meng then nodded her head in satisfaction. Then, she glanced at Leah coldly at the side. Leah swayed his tail and walked to Gu Meng Meng's side like a little wife. He placed his arm on Elvis's shoulder and used his long and narrow eyes to act out an affectionate apology. Chapter 833. Gu Meng Meng also knew that she had made a huge fuss today. In fact, she could have used gentler methods and words to tell them what she thought, but she just couldn't control her temper at the moment. Perhaps it was because of the bloody tragedy that Natalie and Peter had kept from each other. She felt really uneasy, terrified and at a loss as to what to do. If Elvis and Leah were to keep things from her, would there come a day when these minor details would pile up into a colossal figure that would crush all the trust between them? You wouldn't understand if I didn't say it. This was the initial state of estrangement in a relationship. But now that Elvis and Leah had promised not to keep things from her again, she naturally wouldn't continue to pester them endlessly. After all, her mental age was already over 1,000 years old. There was a limit to how willful she could be. Lowering her head, Gu Meng Meng twisted her fingers. My tone wasn't good today. I said many harsh words. I'm sorry. Elvis and Leah each stood on one side and kissed Gu Meng Meng's face at the same time. The two perfectly handsome faces with completely different styles had the same doting expression on them. Elvis did not say a word while Leah held Gu Meng Meng's little hand and kissed it. You know very well that compared to an apology, we prefer to hear your confession. Gu Meng Meng's face was blushing, looking even more hazy and gentle under the moonlight. She said in a soft tone, I will never say that I want to leave again. You guys are the most important people to me. I only took an afternoon nap and I already feel so lonely. If you guys really leave, I don't even know who I can cry to. Silly girl. Elvis tightened his grip on her waist. Looking into her apologetic eyes, he smiled. Unless I die, I will never leave you. Gu Meng Meng pressed her forehead against Elvis's. You won't leave even if I chase you away. Elvis kissed her on the lips. Then, he replied in a low voice, you are my entire world. Where else can I go? Gu Meng Meng didn't say anything else. She just smiled sweetly. Leah brought over a large bowl of potato and meat paste. Can we eat now? Do you want it here or take it to Natalie's and have it with her? Gu Meng Meng thought for a while and said, let's go eat with Natalie. I will bid farewell to her on the way. You want to go to Sauter? Elvis asked as he carried Gu Meng Meng towards Natalie's cave. Gu Meng Meng nodded and said, I'm worried about Barit and Oakley, and Qi Xian is also here. Elvis stopped in his tracks and looked at her quietly. Gu Meng Meng tilted her head and asked, what's wrong? Elvis took a deep breath and wanted to suppress the discomfort in his heart, but when he thought about how he promised not to hide anything from her, he swallowed back the words I'm fine and ground it into a sentence in his throat. Barit is your pursuer, he even confessed to you earlier than Leah. You're so worried about him. Are you thinking of taking him in as our third child? Gu Meng Meng was taken aback for a moment before smiling. Instead of answering, she asked, then I also mentioned Oakley, are we going to accept him as the fourth in our family? Chapter 834. Gu Meng Meng was dumbfounded by Elvis's words, why? Elvis stared at Gu Meng Meng quietly for a long time before asking, you like Oakley? Gu Meng Meng shook her head without thinking, I don't, but I don't like Barit either, then why does Barit have the right to challenge me? Elvis said, he went up to the platform of the deity's punishment for you and offered to become your stored food without knowing that you are the messenger of the beast deity. You praised him more than once, and, you even kissed him before. Gu Meng Meng could admit to the first few things, but what did he mean by kissing him before? Why did Gu Meng Meng have no impression of it at all? When did I kiss him before? Elvis's gaze deepened, you did, because you kissed him, so he miraculously came back to life. On the platform of the deity's punishment, Leah saw it too. Gu Meng Meng turned to look at Leah, only to see him nodding his head unwillingly with a conflicted expression. The way he looked at Gu Meng Meng was not right. Gu Meng Meng recalled carefully and remembered that there was indeed such a thing. At that time, Barit had fainted due to dehydration. Actually, he could have recovered by feeding him some water, but Gu Meng Meng tried a few times to no avail. In the end, she had no choice but to use her mouth to feed Barit water, and she only fed him one mouthful before being brought away by Elvis. Gu Meng Meng face-bombed, sweating, that was not a kiss, I was just saving him. If I didn't feed him some water, he would have been captured by Leah to be skinned and made into a specimen, how scary. Leah, who had been silent all this while, said faintly, if you don't like him, what does his life or death have to do with you? This sour feeling, Gu Meng Meng did not dare to dwell on the past with these two anymore. In their eyes, as long as Gu Meng Meng looked at someone, that person would definitely be their love rival. Even for Cole, just because Gu Meng Meng mentioned his name frequently, the two of them had already imagined all sorts of love-hate plots. As a result, Gu Meng Meng didn't even dare to scold Cole in front of them in the later stages. I really want to go to Sauter because I am worried, but it's not because I like Barit. It's because he, Oakley and the rest of the snow foxes are now my tribesmen and I have to be responsible for their lives. You can't ignore them when you know they're in danger. Elvis heaved a sigh of relief and did not refute Gu Meng Meng. He did not want to force Gu Meng Meng to admit that she liked males other than him and Leah, so he had been anticipating Gu Meng Meng's rebuttal from the start. Now that she had refuted him, he naturally would not pursue the matter any further. What should he do if she doesn't refute him? They continued walking towards Natalie's side. Chapter 835. Elvis and Leah both laughed. Gu Mingming's words had two meanings. Firstly, it was a promise. In the beast world, the difference in levels was absolute. Elvis was 5th level, Leah was 4th level, and unmated males were at most 3rd level. How could they talk about protecting themselves in the hands of Elvis and Leah, who had been through hundreds of battles? Their chances of escaping were not high, so how could they talk about challenging? This meant that there would not be any new members in the family. Secondly, it was a spur. She was indirectly telling them that she did not wish to see them get hurt. They had to become even stronger and protect themselves no matter what. Only then would they have the right to stand by her side and be her males. I will always listen to Xiao Meng. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's temple. Leah bit Gu Mingming's left ear and rubbed it intimately. As you wish. After a while, Elvis and Leah continued to accompany Gu Mingming to Natalie's cave. But when they were about to reach, the three of them stopped in their tracks with a serious expression. Yes, the beast world did not have the concept of chastity, but Gu Mingming did. I happened to bump into my in-laws eating fish while delivering food. It was so awkward at the cave entrance. Should I turn around and leave? Or should I turn around and leave? It's urgent, I'm waiting online. Gu Mingming jumped down from Elvis's arms and took 2 steps back with a blushing face. She asked Leah to divide a portion of the food into a stone bowl and let Elvis place it at the cave entrance. Elvis did as he was told with a black face. Then, he carried Gu Mingming back to the cave where they were temporarily staying. Gu Mingming had slept a lot in the afternoon and was in high spirits now. She could not fall asleep no matter what, so after dinner, she dragged Elvis and Leah to discuss the rescue mission at Sauter. When she first heard the news, Gu Mingming wanted to rush over immediately. But after calming down, she felt that it was not appropriate to rush over now. Elvis and Leah also felt the same way. The dry season had just started and Cole had already brought his men over. No matter what he wanted to do, he would have already succeeded by now. It was not the best time for them to rush over now. Even though Gu Mingming was the main fighting force, with Qi Xian in Cole's hands, there was a limit to what she could do. And if she was not careful, she might even be threatened by Cole, causing her teammates to be tied up and be controlled by him. Besides, the stray beasts led by Peter were under Cole's orders. Without Cole's permission, Peter would never have told them this news. Leah boiled water for her to bathe. Although the small lake here was almost dried up, she had not bathed for 2 to 3 days and her body was extremely uncomfortable. Although it was not to the extent of being unbearable, how could Elvis and Leah allow her to suffer? Who cared if other people could drink it or not? All they wanted was for their female to have a comfortable bath. If anyone was dissatisfied, they could try to snatch the bath water from their hands. This was also one of the reasons why every tribe wanted to take possession of the messenger of the beast deity. Food in winter and water source in dry season were enough to make every tribe in the entire beast world go crazy. The item that Gu Mingming shared so easily was the treasure that the previous messenger of the beast deity used to control the beast world. Chapter 837. Is this considered coercion? Gu Mingming chuckled. Should I do as he wishes? What is his motive for making me go to Sauter? Elvis placed the last grape into Gu Mingming's mouth. It should not be coercion, but a provocation. Gu Mingming raised her brows and looked at Elvis. Elvis chuckled. Do you still want to eat? Should I help you pluck more? Gu Mingming shook her head. Elvis rubbed Gu Mingming's little head. Seeing her eating contentedly made him feel better. But at the mention of Cole, a cold glint flashed across Elvis's eyes. It was fleeting and not obvious. Sauter is now a division of Saint Nazaire. Cole brought stray beasts to invade. This is a territorial dispute and there is no room for compromise. So it is not a threat and I will not allow you to be forced. Gu Meng Meng nodded. She was impressed by Elvis's strong stance on the left. My hubby is so manly. This imaginary special effect had been floating around Gu Meng Meng like a 3D experience. Elvis enjoyed Gu Meng Meng's adoring gaze very much. The water temperature was no longer high enough. Elvis scooped Gu Meng Meng out of the stone basin and wrapped her up in a warmed beast skin. Leah moved the bathtub out to deal with it. Then, he started a fire in the cave to evaporate all the water from Gu Meng Meng's bath. This was to prevent her from sleeping uncomfortably at night. Elvis placed Gu Meng Meng on the bed and rested her head on his thighs. He used a clean beast skin to gently dry her hair. His heart softened at the sight of her flushed face from bathing. Let Leah and I handle the territorial dispute, all right. Gu Meng Meng nodded. Yeah, I am happy to be free. Actually, when Peter told them this piece of news, Leah immediately realized that this was Cole's entire plan. After all, Leah was all too familiar with Cole's methods. Even if he could not immediately piece together the whole picture, he still had a sharp intuition. And Elvis naturally trusted Leah. That was why the two of them were so obviously hostile towards Peter. There was no other reason. Anyone who helped Cole set up a trap for Gu Meng Meng was naturally an enemy. It was the same for his biological father. He did not tell Gu Meng Meng because he did not want her to worry. After all, during this period of time, there seemed to be nothing that could make her happy. They had clearly promised to make her happy, but why was it that after mating with them, Gu Meng Meng's life was filled with trouble? Elvis and Leah frowned slightly. They even suspected if it was because of their unbearable selves that they had tainted Gu Meng Meng's originally brilliant life. But even so, they still held on to her hand greedily, not wanting to be abandoned by her. That was why they wanted to solve these troubles in a place where she couldn't see them. But their Meng Meng didn't like it when they hid things from her. From now on, I won't hide anything from you. Elvis was still drying Gu Meng Meng's hair gently and seriously. Chapter 838. The next morning, Natalie appeared before Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng was momentarily taken aback, but it didn't last long. Natalie's complexion was already much rosier. She must have eaten regularly these few days, in addition to Peter's meticulous care. Her complexion looked much better than before. Although she was still weak, at least she didn't give off the feeling that she was about to die the next second. Natalie kept sneaking glances at Elvis from the corner of her eye, as if she wanted to speak to him. But Elvis's stay-away expression was too cold. Natalie mustered up her courage several times, but ultimately didn't dare to approach Elvis. Sighing, Natalie shifted her gaze back to Gu Meng Meng. Peter promised to bring me to find the antidote for Qi Xian. Although it will not be easy, I will definitely supervise him in concocting the antidote. Gu Meng Meng nodded. Gu Meng Meng tilted her head to look at Peter. An unnatural expression flashed across his face. Clearly, finding the antidote was all nonsense. He was just creating an opportunity to bring Natalie far away from this place and start anew. A world where there would be no misunderstandings or conflicts between the two of them. He just wanted to find a way to stay by Natalie's side, right? But, winter is coming after the rainy season. Won't it be too dangerous for you to go out to find the antidote now? Gu Meng Meng was a little worried. Although Peter was a 5th-level beast and had rich battle experience, even the strongest beast was as insignificant as a grain of sand in the face of nature. How could he overcome the cold winter and the lack of food alone? It really wasn't a wise decision to go out at this time. Natalie's eyes flickered with bitterness as she said, I know. It'll definitely be tough. But I want to quickly concoct the antidote. Only by saving Qi Xian can I have the right to say sorry. Natalie's gaze landed on Elvis again. Seeing that he didn't even frown, completely ignoring her and Peter, she would be lying if she said she wasn't disappointed. But after what Elvis had gone through, it was understandable that he wouldn't forgive her. She needed a chance to make up for it. She had to do something for Elvis, so that she wouldn't be tormented by the guilt in her heart. Peter was also aware of this, that was why he allowed her to do such ridiculous things. However, even though he was by her side, and the so-called antidote was completely up to him, he naturally had a way to make her obediently follow his rhythm and satisfy her desire to make up for it within a safe and controllable range. Gu Mengmeng did not say anything else. After all, it was someone else's life and they had the right to decide how they wanted to live it. What she could do was to stop when it was appropriate. Otherwise, going too far would be as bad as falling short. That afternoon, Gu Mingming's group and Natalie left the stray beast camp together. They headed towards the place where Peter had rushed out to snatch the kiss of the ocean. Before they parted, Gu Mengmeng suddenly placed her hand on Elvis's shoulder. She frowned and turned to look at Peter. You were the one who bit Elvis's shoulder so deeply that his bones could be seen, right? Peter froze and instinctively turned to look at Natalie. As expected, he met a pair of angry eyes. Chapter 839. Natalie's eyes reddened and tears welled up in her eyes. Her heartache fell on Elvis's shoulder. Even though there were no teeth marks left, it was as if Natalie could see Elvis being bitten until his flesh was a bloody mess. Clenching her fists, Natalie turned and ran off. Peter glared at Gu Mengmeng, but she just shrugged. She will run off if I don't chase after her now. Peter shook his fist fiercely, then ran after Natalie without looking back. Gu Mengmeng crossed her arms as she watched Peter explain and Natalie throw a tantrum. Only when the two of them had completely disappeared from sight did Gu Mengmeng lean into Elvis's arms. Let's go back to Saint Nazaire. Elvis didn't say a word. He just carried Gu Mengmeng steadily towards Saint Nazaire. Leah reached out to poke Gu Mengmeng's little face. Why are you smiling like that? Gu Mengmeng had been trying to hold in her laughter. But after being exposed by Leah, she couldn't hold it in any longer. Shaking her shoulders, she laughed. I guess I am the first person in history to matchmake my own in-laws. I should be able to secure the title of a filial daughter-in-law, right? Leah raised his brows. I don't understand. Are you trying to matchmake them or break them up? Gu Mengmeng leaned against Elvis's shoulder and chuckled. In this world, there is probably no one who is more sincere to Natalie than Peter. Peter is the best candidate to ensure that Natalie receives the best care. But he bullied my hubby so much in the past. If I let him live too comfortably, I will not be happy. Elvis lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's little head. So, are you taking revenge for me? Gu Mengmeng nodded and admitted it openly. The corners of Elvis's lips curled up. His gaze was always gentle when he met her eyes. Raising his brows, he said, based on my character, this level of revenge is too gentle. But, because you are the one who did it, I feel very blessed. Yeah, just take it that I have already taken my revenge. I will not pursue the past. Actually, Gu Mengmeng didn't mean that. She did not do anything cruel to Del, not because she expected Elvis to forgive her. After all, he had gone overboard and was too cruel in the past. In Gu Mingming's heart, it would not be wrong to kill Peter 100 times over. But she did not do so because she did not want to overstep her boundaries. She wanted to leave the final decision to Elvis. No matter how he wanted to take revenge, she would stand by his side unconditionally and support his decision. And the little prank she was playing now was at most creating some trouble for Peter, taking it as interest. However, if Elvis was willing to give up on revenge because of the sweetness she brought him, it would be the best scenario for her. She did not care what happened to Peter. She cared about Elvis. Forgiving Peter was actually letting Elvis off. The heart was only so big. If it was used to store hatred, then where was the love? But if she went to sleep with the mentality of wanting to see the beast deity, she could see him every time. To say it was a coincidence was too much of a coincidence. The message that Wang Xiaoxin left behind clearly said that the beast deity would only guide them in the dream if there was a major deviation in their course of action. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.